Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on the fossil fuels report in IATM. We know how important operation of heritage is in terms of its experience and engaging our visitors. Speaking as one who's taken a steam engine into central London, so more than happy to engage with that. Thank you, Peter, just for giving us that update. And Meredith, it's you again. How do you collect climate change? How do you collect contemporary issues in a digital world? It's something which Meredith is going to touch on for us now. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, like much of the rest of the world, Scotland's cities are experiencing a revolution in smart, sustainable transport and increased encouragement towards active travel. Scotland's energy strategy, low carbon commitments, and its stated ambitions in the Scottish Government's Sustainable Cities and Communities Development Goals, published in 2020, prioritises walking, cycling and public and shared transport options in preference to single occupancy private car. And the Scottish Government has set ambitious targets. The equivalent of 50% of Scotland's heat, transport and electricity consumption to be met from renewable sources by 2030, phase out petrol and diesel cars in Scotland's public fleet by 2025, and net zero by 2045. In order to achieve these goals, public behaviour will also need to change. City centre transformation schemes were radically accelerated by COVID-19, prioritising pedestrians and cyclists over motor vehicles in response to the public health emergency. At the same time, trials of connected autonomous vehicles, electric vehicle charging points, cargo bike delivery collectives, on-street bike hire schemes, an extended tram network and hydrogen-powered buses are all making an impact on Scottish cities. At National Museum Scotland, we have been looking at ways to collect these changes, whether the firsts or the lasts, or contemporary versions of existing vehicles, systems and infrastructure, and the patterns of behaviour they represent, all of which have their own challenges. This paper provides an overview of the changes we can see happening on our roads, with case studies of recent acquisitions made by National Museum Scotland, namely the Lutz Pathfinder Pod, a prototype autonomous vehicle, and items relating to Edinburgh's cargo bike movement, bringing together two ends of the sustainable transport technology spectrum. It also looks at some of the difficulties we face in trying to collect material culture relating to these changes. We collected our first fully autonomous vehicle, indeed the first level 4 autonomous vehicle in any UK museum. It is one of 3 pods used for the Lutz Pathfinder trials in Milton Keynes, the first test of fully self-driving vehicles in public pedestrianised areas in the UK. Designed and manufactured in Coventry by the RDM Group, who gifted us this to NMS, the project used electric-powered 2-seater pods equipped with autonomous control systems. It has full automated capability, although for the duration of the trials, it retained a steering wheel and pedals, as well as a trained operator in each pod ready to take control of the vehicles if necessary, which you can see in this still from the trials. I think the person walking alongside is the modern equivalent of the man with the red flag walking in front of a car. The Lutz Pathfinder trials were completed in 2016 and fed into the larger scale UK Autodrive programme. The technology is now being used commercially by an offshoot from the Oxford University Robotics Department, Oxbotica, working with online grocery delivery company Ocado, who have created small robots for domestic shopping deliveries. National Museum Scotland took delivery of one of these pods in the summer of 2020, between lockdowns. On delivery to the museum, the business-sensitive software was not included, meaning that what was in fact collected was the shell of a small connected autonomous vehicle. This is a perennial issue for museums collecting around smart technology, and a question which museums looking to preserve digital heritage have been wrestling with for a decade at least. Without the software, there is little that makes the Lutz pod different to any other electric vehicle. The design was specific to the project and is not intended to reflect how future commercially available autonomous vehicles will look. It resembles a very small smart car with facets at each corner for the scanning sensor hardware, and is still covered in its project livery, acknowledging all project stakeholders, and trial vehicle in large letters across the front and rear. Finally, it has strips of LEDs around each wheel arch to add that futuristic touch. As an object for display, it gives us the opportunity to reflect on turning points in technology and what might be the dominant transport modes for the future. Advocates anticipate that connected autonomous vehicles will significantly improve road safety by eliminating human error, as well as helping to reduce congestions in towns and cities by enabling vehicles to drive closer together. We can imagine some other potential positive outcomes of CAVs. Independence of travel for millions of people not able to drive due to physical conditions, freeing up parking spaces, returning ugly car parks to green natural parks, and changes to productivity and how people will live and work. But there could, of course, be negative outcomes as well. It could mean the end of professional drivers, taxis and bus drivers and car mechanics. The expense of the technology means it won't be aimed at the people who would benefit most from it. And it continues to prioritise the car as the answer to transport problems, with cars dominating shared spaces instead of encouraging public transport or improved infrastructure to empower active travel. One real-world application of connected autonomous technology was due to take place in Scotland in the summer of 2020. The CAV Forth project will run autonomous buses across the Forth Road Bridge. Unfortunately, it has been repeatedly delayed and no new dates for the trials have been confirmed. The new service will be made up of 4 Alexander Dennis Enviro 200 single-deck buses running a 14-mile route. It will provide capacity for up to 10,000 passengers a week, connecting a park and ride in Fife with the Edinburgh Park Transport Hub, and is expected to be popular with commuters, students, day trippers and tourists, as well as novelty riders keen to be the first to say they have been driven by artificial intelligence. I think it's interesting that the trials are being run on regular 6-cylinder diesel buses. As with the LutzPod trials, the aim of the autonomous buses includes seeing the technology work within the environment, understanding how suitable self-driving vehicles are for urban use, and most importantly, gauging the sentiment of both passengers and the pedestrians that will encounter the vehicle. This is an area that NMS will be watching with an eagle eye to see what, if anything, we can collect from the trials. I am less interested in collecting a modern diesel bus, we do have a diesel bus in the collection, than in something relating to the passenger or driver experience, or something that demonstrates what makes it different from any other city bus. Other new developments are happening to Scottish buses. Last year, Aberdeen's first bus company introduced the world's first hydrogen-powered double-decker bus on its routes. However, Aberdeen's fleet of hydrogen buses was taken off the road earlier this year due to technical issues. The buses were introduced as part of a project aimed at zero emissions and low noise travel. So they are aimed not only at reducing carbon pollution, but also noise pollution. And Grampian Transport Museum have already expressed an interest in collecting one of the first generation buses. These buses represent changes we are seeing in cities across Scotland. In a report of March 2021 on public transport, 93% of Scottish people in a national survey agreed that the Scottish Government should implement an integrated, accessible and affordable public transport system and improved local infrastructure throughout Scotland that reduces the need for private cars and supports active travel. As a consequence, low emission zones are being introduced across Scottish cities to restrict the most polluting vehicles from accessing city centres and encouraging the use of public transport and active travel. It is clear that substantial change is coming to our city streets. And we are already seeing changes in the way people use buses, and these changes in behaviour can be harder to spot and harder for museums to collect, such as the end of paper bus tickets. Already, the bus companies' own ticketing apps have been replaced with tap-and-go technology. And so this is what we had briefly the Lothian Buses ticket app where you would purchase the ticket on your phone. Now you just tap and go and there's nothing at all to say what you have bought. These digital developments are notoriously difficult for museums to collect, and will we even know when the last bus ticket has been printed? Even changes to bus timetable information is evident. These bus tracker displays are being replaced with updated versions. We've expressed an interest in acquiring one for the collections. Interestingly, bus companies also have their own live bus information on their websites and apps. COVID-19 and the Spaces for People initiative has had an impact on changing the urban landscape and street furniture. Temporary measures made during the lockdowns have remained in place to encourage active travel and to help meet low emission zone targets in city centres. Anecdotally, numbers of cyclists have increased, and recent research by Stirling University suggests that while the numbers of cars on the road have decreased by nearly 10%, there has been an increase in delivery vans and HGVs, possibly as more people order goods online for home delivery. Other ephemeral changes are also difficult to collect. The liveries of trams and buses reflect the current trends and preoccupations of our times, but there is no easy way to preserve these frequent changes except by photography. So this was an Edinburgh tram that's got a mask on its front, encouraging people to wear masks, and then the sticker on the window telling people how to behave during lockdowns. New types of vehicles to collect include items reflecting micro-mobility schemes, such as street hire bikes and e-scooters, which have appeared in cities in the last 10 years and provide a low-cost alternative to bike ownership. Edinburgh City Council, as part of its work towards active travel, set up a cycle hire scheme, but it fell victim to vandalism and was withdrawn, and a replacement has not yet been announced. The move towards more online shopping and home deliveries accelerated by the pandemic not only saw a rise in petrol and diesel van deliveries, but also a creative response from 2 cargo bike organisations. Last summer, we acquired a collection of cycling clothing and posters from members of an Edinburgh cargo bike collective to illustrate a recent radical movement away from carbon-emitting vehicles in urban areas towards a sustainable zero-carbon delivery system. The Cargo Bike Collective was born out of the pandemic. It has 2 parts. Firstly, the Cargo Bike movement was set up as a charitable response to food poverty and waste in the city. They collect surplus food from supermarkets and deliver it to those experiencing food insecurity. At the start of the first lockdown in March 2020, a team of volunteers using a fleet of cargo bikes delivered food directly to homeless people being accommodated in hotels, shelters and hostels. And Far Out Deliveries is the other wing of the Cargo Bike Collective, is a cargo bike delivery business that was created when the city's festivals were cancelled in 2020, forcing a creative response by festival technicians to the lack of work. The Cargo Bike Collective and their commercial counterpart, Far Out Deliveries, both use T-shirts and other merchandise designed by local artists and produced by ethical local manufacturers. Collecting these branded items illustrates this is a social movement and reflects its wider impact. And to end on a positive note, I recommend that those of you still on Facebook check out this group if you haven't already. It's new urbanist memes for transit-oriented teens, but don't worry, you don't actually have to be a teen to join because they let me in. It is a vibrant online community tracking contemporary urban issues for young people with a transit-oriented focus. Started in 2017, by December 2020, the NumTot group had over 210,000 members, and now over 226,000 when I took this screen grab. Largely from the US and Europe, but membership is global and growing. There is increased interest in doing transport differently, within the context of a climate emergency, low carbon technology, and with a social conscience, as demonstrated by this emerging international and young demographic, expressing themselves through the creation of memes. A sign of hope in our future, not only as a planet with such engaged young and not so young people, but perhaps just as importantly for our transport museums. Was that a phone or was that a buzzer? Both. Okay.
Only 1 minute and 24 seconds to go.
Oh, thank you.